And welcome to Otherworldly. This is Tchipakkan, and the Otherworldly is the Changing Times, Changing Worlds show that that goes with the Changing Times, Changing Worlds. Do try, I hope, to get the to come to the conference if you can. And if you can't, we do have the virtual track. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about palmistry, because it's just one of those things that I think is very useful. I came up with something, and let's see if I can do the share screen. And there, I have borrowed a term. There, can you see that? It says palm JIZZ. JIZZ is a term I have borrowed from birding that it stands for, and I kid you not, general impression, size, and shape. And because they're being peculiar. You know, we're not the only ones that can have strange sense of humor. And basically what it means is that's the first thing you go for. And you can do that in, gee, I wonder if there's a way of having me up there with that. I don't know. Okay, well, just let me run down that, and then I'm going to take it down. And so if you look for the size and the shape of the hands, and then the flexibility, the color, the texture, moisture, all of this you can do in a when you are on a subway, on a bus, in the grocery store, and that you can. That's interesting. Why are we looking at him and not me? There we go. Anyway, so yeah, so I guess the first thing I want to tell you about palmistry is that if you don't see anything unusual, don't worry about it. It doesn't count. It is only the things that are different, that jump out at you, that are what you're supposed to pay attention to. So if you can't say, that's subtle, I can't tell, then don't worry about it. You're cool. Size. Obviously, a person's hands, they have big hands or little hands. And the question, it is in proportion to their size. Babies have tiny hands. Big people have big hands. But compared to their body, you have big hands and little hands. The way to tell that is if you take the bottom of your hand and put it on your chin, or if you're reading for somebody else, have them do it. And the average person's goes right to their hairline, or where their hairline used to be, if it shifted. And that is an average size hand. Now, if the fingers go up into the hairline or further up to where it was, that's a big hand. And if you have little hands, it'll only go up into the middle of your forehead. And what this tells you about the person is if you have big hands, you see you are good for details. You are, oddly enough, they tend to give you more perspective on getting to the details. You're very detail oriented. If you have small hands, you see a big picture, but you're shite on the details. So when we think of a certain pumpkin flavored ex-politician, he's got all these great grandiose ideas, but he doesn't have a clue about how it actually works. But you'll see a lot of people who are good at organizing, people who like clockmakers and people who work on tiny little things have big hands. You'd think it was the other way around, but it isn't. The shapes have well, okay. there are, there we go for my shape one. Palmistry terms. There we go. Oh, right, share screen again. Let me see if I can share the screen. Yes, I want to share the screen. There's, push the button, Max. Okay, let's try that. Share. Ah. There. Maybe there. All right. Can you see that? Or it says, okay, there, this, if you know the basic elements and the types of characteristics that are common to them, you can figure out by looking at somebody's hand which element they are. And so for instance, I don't know if I can put my hand up. If you see, my hand is about as wide as it is tall. That no, it's not. My hand is significantly narrower than it is tall. So that is a long hand. And if you look at the elements over here, if you have a long, there's two kinds of long hands. There's the water and the fire. And the fire has shorter fingers, which basically means that the fingers aren't as quite as long as the palm. Now, I know all of you are going to be looking at your own hands as we do this. This is the best way to do it. So you will look and you could take your hand, or if you had a ruler, you could take and check and see if is your hand, say, on just under the fingers on either side, is that longer? You know, if you go like that, it comes down to here. So I've still got leftover hand down there. So that makes it a long palm. If you have long palm and long fingers, you're water. That means you want to combine things. You are good at you're tended to be more emotional. You are in touch with your emotions. Water people are good at mixing things, whether it is chemistry or whether it is the right bunch of people in a party. They get things to blend that might not otherwise blend. A fire, on the other hand, changes things. They never come into something without, they transform it in some way. Now, if your hand is square, the palm part is no wider than it is, longer than it is wide, and you have short fingers, you have an earth hand. Earth is what you would expect. It's stable, it's solid, it's practical. These are the people who you go to when you want to get something done. The air hand, on the other hand, has the short palm but long fingers, and they are the thinkers. They think about things. So if you, John, could you get that for me, please? If you are going to, you know, somebody's always overthinking, that's an air hand. So when you are in a crowd or just in see people, you can look around and you can look at them as they gesture, as they do anything. And I did that when I was way back years ago when Obama was running, and I looked at his hand as he talked at speeches, and because he's kind of funny looking, and I looked at his hand and I said, that is a thinking man. He thinks about things. He knows his stuff, and that's the kind of thing you get with an air hand. So if you can if you can tell by looking, and remember, if you don't see anything unusual, if the fingers aren't noticeably longer, if the fingers aren't, the palm isn't noticeably shorter, longer than the fingers are, then you don't have to worry about it. But when you're looking at your own, you want to know earth, air, fire, water, and you can do that. Now, the other types of things that you want to see is if you look at the fingertips, there are round fingertips, and let's see if I can show you. This one is kind of a rounded fingertip. This is more of a square. This is more pointy. And that one is more spatulate. I don't know if you can tell, but it kind of sticks out more at the top than it does at the bottom. These are different kinds of fingertips: round, square, pointed, spatulate. And the spatulate is people who have to keep moving. If you have a spatulate fingertips or spatulate hand, if most of your fingers are one of those shapes, that will tell something about you. A rounded one will be someone who is more calm and able to deal with things. Square is going to be more practical. Pointed is going to be pointed, or will be more, or I try and cram everything into 1 hour. And pointed will give you more of an artistic bent. Okay, so you got your active and your artistic and your practical and your calm. Okay, so those are the fingertip things, and those are other things that you can tell just by looking from across the room, or you can't. And yes, there are a lot of people who have mixed fingertips. It doesn't necessarily match. And so that is so just to review that. If you are an earth hand, so the square palm, short fingers, you're practical, calm, and you need to be outside a lot, and they keep themselves busy. Air has the square palm, long fingers. They tend to be more intellectual, curious, and they're more nervous, but they are very tenacious, as the wind never stops. Fire changes situations they get into. They are energetic. They tend to be impatient. They require individuality. They require variety, and they're very individual. Long water has long palms, long fingers, and they're adaptable. They make connections. They're emotionally sensitive. They also need peace. Another thing that so that's the shape of the palm. Now then you check how elastic they are. It is probably not going to be a surprise to anybody here that the older you get, the stiffer your hand gets. And so if you look at how flexible it is, you just kind of push it back a little bit. The further my fingers used to go back like that, they don't anymore. The more flexible your hand is, the more able you are to accept new ideas easily. If your hand is stiff, it's going to be harder for you to pick up new ideas. You look at the color. This is you can see it's kind of pink. The main colors that you'll see in a hand is pink, white, red. If you have a very red hand, that shows a lot of energy. That's because there's more blood circulating in there. And so pink is your basic healthy hand. If your hand is very, very white, that means that you're lacking energy. If it's got a yellowish tinge, you tend to be a little cranky. It might indicate that you're having trouble in your liver, although just some people have more of a yellowish tinge to them. And if it's got a bluish tinge, send them to the doctor, because that means they haven't got enough oxygen in their blood and they got a problem. Look at the texture.
Tchipakkan.
Yes.
Tchipakkan.
Yes,
Color
yes.
of the palm. What about people who are African American?
Okay, they have a slightly darker beige thing, but the undertones will also show that, is it more pinkish? Is it more yellowish? Is it more, and they can get bluish too. So that's but yes, it's darker, but of course, it's still paler than the rest of their skin. If you look at almost anything, your palm is usually lighter than the rest of your skin. If you have the texture, if it's rough, then you're supposed to be more coarse. If you are and less refined, if it's fine and not very fine and very soft and smooth, then you're supposed to be more refined and more sensitive. You will also see that the lines will be frequently more numerous on a smooth palm. Hair on the back of the hand is going to give more energy. So if you got somebody who's got hair on the back of their hand, especially if it's red, they're a more intense person. Can be dry. Dry, it means a person who is very restrained. If it's moist, they tend to be nervous. And also, last thing on the shape and the general impression, these are the across the room, what I'd call what JIZZ is, how you hold your hand. Your thumb is where a lot of your ego is. If you hold your hand up, and I'm telling you, you can hold your hand in almost any position. But if you kind of shake it a little bit and then hold it up without even thinking about it, that'll tell you where you. Now this is about a 45-degree angle, and that is about where most people hold their hands. If you hold your hand close, that is going to indicate that you are private and you're closed-minded, and you really don't want to. You don't want to learn things that are going to upset your worldview. If you hold your hand like this, you're open-minded. As a matter of fact, if you hold your hand at a 90-degree angle, then you're probably so open-minded that your brain might fall out. It means that you are really gullible. So, but another important thing to remember is the position you're holding your hand in changes. It changes from day to day and hour to hour, depending on your mood. So you can see people who are even that if you ask them to hold up their hand in something like this, they're usually not feeling very safe. So but this is a person who is very, keeping things close to the chest, and this is your average, and that's about where you are if you're really, really open-minded. Then, okay, as long as I've got our hands up here, if you look at your fingers, my little fingers sticking out a little bit, that's okay. I should go to the vocabulary, the palmistry terms. We want to, I know I've got the share screen thing here somewhere. Really ought to be better at that than I am. Share screen, I know, there's, okay. Share. There. Okay, here's the terms. And the terms are basically the same as the terms that we use in most Western magic. We are using the Roman gods and goddesses, planets, to describe them. The first finger is named for Jupiter, the king of the gods. That's the leader position. Saturn, his old man, is the previous position. He continued to be the ruler of wealth and scholarly pursuits. And Apollo is for creative. It's artistry and healing are big for Apollo. But then again, Mercury, which is for all sorts of communication and travel. You can think of Mercury and his winged sandals and hat, and he had to do with speed and travel. Mercury is this finger. So these are the fingers, and they are also the mounts underneath it. We'll get to that when I get the camera back on me again. Then we get down to the middle of the hand is Mars. Mars is the warrior, and you had the side that you would use for a karate chop is called a percussion. That's where you would hit things with. You don't need to know that. And the other side is called the thenar side. Again, another thing you do not need to know. But Mars next to the thumb is lower Mars, or Mars passive, and the other one on the other side is Mars active. And so if you have these things, okay, I should also, and below them you see the moon, and you have the mound of Venus. is down here is the basic big area underneath the thumb. Why they do not say that the thumb belongs to Venus, I do not know. But on the other hand, why are they throwing in Apollo with Saturn? He's not an Olympian. They should have that for Pluto. What the heck? Of course, they also avoid Hestia and Juno. So let's. But this is the vocabulary of the palmistry and most of magic. So when if you have an understanding, and I hope most of you do, that you know that leadership is here. Don't say point your finger. You tell people what to do. That's leadership. The Saturn is the he's the center pillar. He's the center of everything. The Apollo, it's the arts, and Mercury is for communication. So then you get down here, and your mound of Venus, this is the old Venus. This is the Venus of fertility and love. It's love, beauty, fertility, but this is vitality. Mars is also vitality. It's the male-female principles, and you've got the passive and the active part. Now, if you look at, you might look at it, let's see, can we do it like that? If you look at your thing on the end, you can see probably Mercury is the one that's sticking up the farthest. And you can look at yours sideways and see which ones of yours are sticking up. Your Venus should be well padded, and you can check these by kind of giving them a poke. How elastic are they? They should respond. They should not, if you poke them, they should not stay in there like that. They should come back out. So my moon is not doing so well today. But think about if you've ever been told how to check a steak without cutting into it, whether it's well done, medium, or rare. It should be about medium. If it's really soft, it's raw. And if it's really hard, it's too well done. And that's about the way it is with the mounts. You see which ones are high and which ones are low. Big trick, this is important. Saturn is not supposed to have a mount. This is where his mount would be, but usually it's more of a crevice. It's more like the Grand Canyon of Saturn. I don't know if you can quite catch that it really goes in there. It's supposed to do that. It's supposed to be flat. Most people spend a lot of time looking at it saying, I haven't got any Saturn and I'm a good scholar. Why haven't I got that? It's like, no, because Saturn is really he's what the riches, the golden age is where everything came out of the ground and fed people without their having to work hard for it. Riches come out of the ground. He's the grounded one. It's supposed to be flat. If you don't have any really high, noticeable things, then you've got a Saturn type hand. It means that you are major scholarly. This is going to be especially more important if you have joints. If you have joints, the upper joints and then the lower joints are if they are larger, if you can see them sticking out a little bit, those are going to indicate that you're either very have a good ability to focus on things, or you have a good ability to focus on more general. I am going too fast again. My head's getting ahead of my mouth and I can't keep up. So basically that's the vocabulary of the hands. And you can look, when you're looking at the fingers, if any of the fingers are leaning away, that indicates that an independence, they're not working strongly with the other. If, for instance, if your fingers all lean toward your Saturn, that would mean they would be giving strength to Saturn. If they lean toward your Jupiter, they would be leaning toward your, that they would be giving strength to your leadership potential. But if they all lean toward your pinky, your Mercury, they would be giving communication. Clearly, I don't have that. If you have a little, if your finger has a bend in it that was not counted, it wasn't, you shut your hand at the car door once. But if you were born with a bent finger, that gives it extra oomph, and it increases the amount of that character you have in you, whether it's leadership, scholarship, art, or communication. Now, what's the thumb for? The thumb is for everything. The thumb tells you, this is your ego. How big is your thumb supposed to be? Well, if you pull your thumb gently up so that it's up there, the thumb should come about halfway up the fur. Here's another word for you in case you don't know. Phalange. Each section of your finger is a phalange. So you got the first, second, third phalange. Halfway up your third phalange is how far your thumb's supposed to go. If your thumb is going a little bit further than that, you have a large thumb. That means you have a large ego. Napoleon's came up this far. So if you have a very large ego, then it'll be very noticeable. But you probably wouldn't have to look at your thumb to know that. But if you have, so again, let it relax and stop keeping your intentions on it. And you hold your fingers up and you say, okay, usually Jupiter and Apollo are the same length. And see, my finger does want to go out there. I'm sorry. But if your Apollo is longer, now Jupiter's going to be the tallest. If your Jupiter is not your Saturn isn't the tallest, there's something weird there. But if your Apollo is longer than your Jupiter, ring finger is longer than your pointer finger, then you are going to be more interested in the arts or healing. If your little finger comes up, the average little finger comes up to the mark of the fold where the joint is on your Apollo. If it goes higher than that, then you have more ability to communicate and also more business acumen. The Mercury is very good on business, which kind of goes with conversation, with the ability to communicate. If it's longer, but one of the things you have to look for is sometimes they're not straight across here. So if you kind of give it a poke or take a look, you can pull out a ruler. If your little finger goes down, and some of them are set down like here, you might have a very long Mercury, but it looks like it doesn't go up to this mark because it's set down there. So do be sure that it is not that where it's set isn't throwing you off.
The one's working hard, so things.
Oh, is there another question? Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned if the Apollo was longer than the Jupiter, but what if the reverse is true? The Jupiter is longer than the Apollo.
Great. That's where I was going next. That means your leadership. If you have if your Jupiter is nearly as long as your Saturn, you're a natural leader. Another thing that you could be is you could be a natural teacher, because teachers fall under the leadership aegis of Jupiter. But that will I do really need to get to the to the thumb, because thumbs are cool. Okay, so your thumb will go about up to here. So yeah, I've covered the length of your fingers. But so, and you should check to see which is bigger, because the first phalange on the thumb is for the will, and the second phalange is for logic. And oddly enough, rather than measuring them like this, they tell you to turn them sideways and measure them like this. So my logic is apparently stronger than my will. And you can always grab a ruler and check it, because sometimes your fingers could move. But you want them to be balanced. They should be balanced. And if they are big, if your logic is over longer, then you're an imbalance will make it more difficult for you to get along. If you have a skinny from the side thumb, that is an indication that you are your mind jumps from one thing to another. If you have a waist, and as you can see, mine is kind of in the middle, but if you have a waist and it's really skinny there, you have a nice little waist on your logic, that means you've got tact. I don't. I will blurt out whatever is going through my mind, and that just tough luck on me, because and anybody around me, because that's the way it is. But if you have a waist, then you will say the right thing. I will be very jealous, but that's the way it is. If you have a big round thumb, a broad thumb is good. It means you've got a good sense of self-esteem. A skinny, flabby thumb is you're, and especially on a short thumb, is you don't have much self-esteem. There's something that they used to call the murderer's thumb, which is big round club thumb. But you have to always look and see if a characteristic is showing up in 2 or 3 places at once. It's if you don't have bad characteristics showing in your Mars, it's not gonna, your thumb isn't gonna make the difference. But if you have a big round thumb, you're gonna have a temper. It's gonna be one of your life challenges to figure out how to hold your temper in. But here's another thing that you can do, which is, this is the fun part, because the second you tell anybody I'm studying palmistry, you're going to be in a sea of hands. Everybody is going to be saying, read mine. And here's something that you can tell them. If you look here, the lines, see, there's lots of lines. And if the line that goes right around the base of the thumb, and if it's got a chain, if it's made up of lots of little lines crossing each other, that indicates that you're going to be fighting with your family. Why? Because you care about them. If it bothers you that someone you really like and are close to is wrong, you will not let it go. If they're a stranger, they can be as wrong as they want. But if they're your family, no, how could you possibly think that? And you've got to try and logic them through it. So that's not going to happen, but there you go. It's but that's one of the things that you will be able to look at, and they'll say, how could you possibly have known that? Yes, I fight with my family all the time. If you have this is where I usually start in the what is it called? When I'm starting a palm reading, I usually start with the nails, because if I start with the nails and I haven't even yet touched their hands, and I look at their nails and I say, oh, you have bad circulation, I bet your hands are cold all the time. Well, if I touch their hands, my saying your hands are cold would not surprise them. But if I haven't touched them yet and I say, well, your hands are cold, you probably have cold hands and feet. They'll say, how would you know that? Well, you would know that because this is called the moon. The white part at the bottom of the nail is the moon. And if you have almost no moon, that means you have bad circulation. And there are lots of other things. I think that one of the most amazing things you see is bowlines. which is they go across the hand and they make a little dent. And you see this in somebody who's gone through some kind of medical crisis. For instance, chemo, that, you know, they've been poisoned for 2 weeks and then they get a chance to recover, and then you go back and do it again. That leaves the little dents across the hands. If you have, however, ridges, vertical ridges on your nails, that's stress. And I'm very careful not to tell people, oh, you have stress, you should reduce the stress in your life. There is no way to reduce stress in your life. I'm sorry. That's just adding another stress on top of it. But it could also indicate kidney iron deficiency. If your nail bed curls around the end of your finger, that used to be the watch glass hand. It's a sign. It was a sign of tuberculosis. It's not as much around anymore, but tuberculosis is serious, so pay attention. The colors come in again. They show up in the nails, where pink is good health and red is for intensity. If you have little tiny marks, a white spot on your nails could be injury. It could be that you've hit your nail, or it could be that you have an injury happened, and your nails will grow out in about 3 months, so you can kind of track things on them. Lung disease is if it's clubbed. If you have a spooning, if your nail goes down in the middle, that's anemia. A healthy nail looks like it's broad. If it looks kind of round as it is down here, that's showing that you have a tendency to heart disease. If it's kind of V-shaped, it's more bronchial and lung problems. An almond-shaped nail is very nice. If it's pale, you're probably an iron deficiency. If you have a very large nail, it could be your thyroid. And if it's very, very short, it's what they call a critical nail. And that means that you have a tendency to be very critical of things. It also indicates that you're probably not healthy. And well, yeah, if you're in chronic pain, of course you're going to be griping a lot. This is not rocket science. No, this is ancient science. So yeah, you can. The nails are a wonderful place to start. And because if you haven't even touched it yet, then it makes it a lot easier for you to explain to break through the disbelief. Once you have broken through their disbelief, then they're more open to telling. And certainly you should not have to try and some of it is a party trick. This is why, as a matter of fact, I have a tendency to charge more for palmistry, because I feel very odd about asking people to pay me to tell them what they should already know about themselves. Because, you know, I'm just telling you what it is. What people really seem to want to know is, when are things happening? When are things going to be happening to me? Which of course gets to, let's talk about the mounts. Let's see, go share. Not the mounts, the lines. There's 3 major lines that we deal with. There is the lifeline, which basically goes around the outside of your Venus at the base of your thumb, and it should take up about 1/4 to 1/3 of your entire hand. That should. Going across your hand and in the middle is the headline, and then across the upper part of your hand is the heart line. And these things can be shown to on how you can tell what the time is on there. The lifeline is they're generally aimed at about 70 years. This is about what it's supposed to indicate. And if you were to take a line going straight down from your through your first finger and one going straight down through your thumb, and it will create a little spot, an imaginary spot down at the base of your hand. Then you take a ruler and go to the corner of your hand. That will be about 35 years. That's about half of it. That where it crosses the lifeline, that'll be about 35. And then you, in 7-year increments, you can change the ruler from that imaginary point, and you can create where 7 and 14 and 21 are on this line. So, or you can take a look at a chart like this, and these are available on my website, which I believe I put on the announcement. So you can find the heart line goes from the edge, from the percussion toward the toward the Jupiter finger or the Saturn finger. The headline goes from the thumb area down toward the other side, and you can look on that for you can use that to check lines. I'm telling you, the average person who wants to read, if you're in a party, the average person wants to, they will tell you, they'll ask 3 questions like, how many children am I going to have? How many times am I going to get married? And when am I going to die? And if you could tell them those things, then then they will go away happy and thinking that you're very clever. On the other hand, the lines on your hand, you can slowly, by working on your personality, change the shape of your hands. Your lines change very quickly. I noticed this when I was in college and we were reading each other's hands, and I noticed people's lines would change from week to week as we read them. Kathy Kane, who wrote the book Adventures in Palmistry, which I really can recommend, has seen them change during a reading. Anytime you change the way you look at the world, that is reflected in your lines. They change. Now, see how well, can you see this or not? I don't know. Okay, yeah, you can. I hope you can. Here's my right hand. This is the dominant hand. You look at both hands. As you can see, my lifeline goes all the way down to, probably 80, maybe 90. It's once you get past 70, you can see it's pretty right. Oh yeah. Also, when you're reading somebody's hands, don't let them flatten it out because it makes it really hard to see the lines. So let them curl and relax a little bit. If you look at this one, you can see that my lifeline stops right there. It kind of starts up at the bottom, but that didn't really count because once you're dead, you're dead. Whatever was going, when I was born, I kind of expected to die at around 35, but I did something. I don't know what I did, but maybe it was an infection I had that in the modern world, you can deal with antibiotics. Yay, modern medicine. But now we are, I will stop in the middle of a rune reading or a tarot reading or something. And so look at that. You change your future. The hand that they're born with almost doesn't change. And I strongly suggest people take palm prints. For one thing, it's a lot easier to see what you're looking at, and you can take notes. I know somebody who, when she's doing palm readings, she has eyeliner pencils, and she marks the hand while she's working on it in different colors to make sure people can see what she's talking about, which I think is a cool idea. But I would be afraid that I would mark something and then not be able to see around it very well. But if you are looking at these, the important thing, this is the other takeaway, you are constantly changing your future. everything you does changes the future you're going to take. I mean, let's face it, this is your entire hand. Your entire hand, your history is shown up in what, 5 by 5, maybe 25 square inches. It's not going to be a lot of detail there. But you can, so if you have that, it's a map of your life. And a map, what's a map for? It's so that you know what's coming up or beyond where you can see. It's why we do fortune telling at all. And what the map tells you, the map doesn't say you're going to drive into the river. The map says, oh, that bridge is out. Therefore, you slow down before you take that next turn, dipshit. And if you don't, then I have no sympathy for you. But you know, that's what map is for. That's what palmistry is for, is so that you can deal with what's coming. And when you deal with it, you change it. So this is something that I think is very important. Okay, so if the person's left-handed, you read the left hand, because that one's the one that's constantly changing, and that's the one that isn't moving. If you have an ambidextrous person, you've got no baseline because they're constantly changing both of them. So what are you going to do? You know, there's variations everywhere. So yeah, so you got your lines on your hands. Your lifeline will show major life events. Your headline shows how you think. It shows both your head and your mind. The general rule of thumb you can use, and this is, of course, highly oversimplified, is the longer the headline, the brighter you are. But the more it tips down, as it goes downward toward the moon, the imagination, psychic stuff, the more creative your thought processes are. Your heart line goes this way, and it is, now they say that if it curls up this way, they used to say that meant you were all about the sex. No, it meant you were practical. You'd be more likely to marry a rich man than a poor man. If it's going straight out to under the Jupiter, and so you've got a straight line in your heart line, you're too romantic. This is the guy who wants the girl, and please excuse me for the old-fashioned binary sexism, but here's the guy, this is the girl who wants the guy on the white horse and who's going to save everything, and this is the guy who, the guy who wants a girl who is both a virgin and a great sex person. It's like, no, if you can't have it. The only place in your lines where you having a fork is a good idea is when you have a lifeline. If you have a fork at the end of, your heart line, if you have a fork at the end of your heart line, that indicates that you're willing to look at it both ways. And that's kind of cool. If your headline splits and you have two headlines, one kind of going straight across and one headed down toward Luna, that means you have separated out. You want to have your logical part and your creative part separated in different parts of your life. That's okay if that's the way you want to do it. Most people get a kind of a gentle curve down there. That's cool too. But so the more that tips, then you've probably heard fate line. This is not usually called fate line anymore. They usually call it the line of Saturn. And then they'll say, if you have a line going up to Apollo, that's the Apollo line. And going up to Mercury, that is a Mercury line. And the Mercury line used to be called the liver line or the via hepatica. It's basically, it has to do with your health. And if you don't have one at all, that's pretty cool, because it means usually what you see is it's showing health problems. Now, if you had a sixth finger here coming out and there was a line going to that, that's where you get the psychic line. So if you're looking at a line here and it's going up toward Mercury, that's probably a Mercury line. But if you've got one coming off that way, it could be that you have the psychic line. However, that's like 1 in 1,000. On the other hand, what you may have other than psychic, is if you have a line that's going between your little finger and this one, so you have a line going like that, that is the girdle of Venus. And they used to say that made a woman loose, via lascivia. Well, no, not really. What it does is it means that she's empathic, and she's picking up on, okay, she's around a horny guy, and so she gets horny when the guy's horny. And so that makes it easier for him to trick her into bed. You can see, if you have that line and it's a good straight line, then you're an empath. But if it's lots of scritchy and it's broken, that means you're an empath who has not learned how to shudder, has not learned how to put up your guards. I mean, it's hard. It's something you have to learn if you're an empath, is you've got to know, is this my feeling or is this the other guy's feeling? Well, sometimes in our house we'll come in, it's like, oh, headache. Okay, who's got a headache around here? Is this my headache? Do I have to do something about it, or is it one of yours? And somebody else will say, yeah, I've got a headache. Well, go drink a glass of water and see if that helps. Usually a glass of water will take care of most headaches. That's the most frequent cause for a headache. But if you are an unshuttered empath, that can cause you all kinds of trouble. So that's that line. There are other rings. If you have a ring around Saturn, that is supposed to be for if you're Raja ring. The Jupiter has got if you have a line around there, it's ring of power. Oh, cool stuff. I'm sorry. I really find this very, very interesting, and get very excited. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk about the marks on the hands. Where's my little thingy? There it is. And share. Over here. So this is what your lines are supposed to look like. This is a good clear line. It can be thick or it can be thin. Either way, but if it's broken, that's not as good. If it's got a fork, it's like, consider the lines as where the chi or the energy in your body runs underneath your hands and gives you, and you can see the patterns it takes. If it's got a fork, that indicates it's going in two directions, that loses some of that energy. If it's got a tassel, that is like when it spreads out in a delta at the end of a long river. Here's a chained line, like I was talking about around the base of the thumb. If it looks like a whole bunch of little leaves together or little scritches. Wavy lines are weak, but more importantly, they should be whole, not broken. An island, these are islands. It can like go off to one side, or it can like split and then go back together. These are stresses. These show where something is going wrong in your life. Your energy is having to deal with the problem and not dealing with what you're with anything else at the time. You can get a whole bunch of islands on a line. If you use the timing to find it, then you can find places where, and if you look and see that there's an island on the lifeline and an island on the headline, an island or another mark on the other lines at the same time, you're pretty sure something was going down there. A cross is not a good thing. Could be a simple X. You could have a cross bar, which is interrupting which interrupts the energy flow. However, if you have a square around a problem, if you got an X but it's got a square around it, that's protection. Any place you find a square, it's protection. Grill, which is scritchy lines in both directions. See, a good vertical line, that's a good sign. You have a horizontal line cutting your line, it's a bad sign. A star is good. A star is very lucky. It means something's good is happening to you. your life is changing for the better. It could be 5, 6, 7, 8 is supposed to be especially good for the star. A spot is some kind of an incident or crisis. Sometimes you'll get a row of light spots. Do check and find out whether or not they rammed a pencil into their hand at some point and the graphite stayed in there, because that is something I have seen before. But those are the spots that you see. And there's a couple spots, types of marks that are especially that mean something specific. And let's see if I can. There's your thumb chain. Though, here we go. If you have a square on your Jupiter, right under your Jupiter finger, that is the teacher's square. Teachers get that square there. It's not, I don't know why. Usually it's protection. If you have vertical lines underneath your Mercury, that's where your children are. So if you want to count how many of them, they show up much better once they've been born, but they're there lightly beforehand. I hate to say it, but some people, I have seen some people whose children don't show up on their hands, and that basically because their children didn't really impact their lives that much, so more men than women. I also have seen if a adopted child is going to show up just as much, which means that there are teachers and nurses and social workers, people who have just take a child into their heart, and that shows up the same. I was once reading a woman, I said, are you a nurse? There's a lot, I'm seeing that you've got a lot of children you love. And she said, yeah, I can't work outside the home. I have 17 kids. And so 17 kids. Okay. Yeah. Well, they're all showing. I'm glad I didn't have to count them, because they always want you to tell you how many. Now, over underneath your Apollo finger, you might, your children obviously can go a long way. Sometimes take up too much time. But if you get 3 vertical marks under your Apollo, that is 3 or 4. That is the sign. That is the healer's stigmata. And that means that you're probably going to be some kind of healer. Now, if you've got a little tassel, it looks like a little broom, that means you're probably growing or using herbs. Now, one of the things people always want to say, am I psychic? Well, yeah, if you've got a cross on the quadrangle, which is the area between the headline and the heart line, then those are the mystic crosses, and you can almost always find one. Now, the useful part of this, and don't we want our palm readings to be useful, is if the mystic cross is closer to the thumb, then you are more likely to be a projector. And if it is closer to the percussion, you are more likely to be a receptor. So you're more likely to get psychic impressions if your psychic cross is down on the other side, and you're more likely to project to other people telepathically if you are if it's higher up. Let's see, there's a girdle. Oh, lines that are coming on the off the side of your hand, like these, are allergy lines, or sometimes they are if you have a drug problem or an alcohol problem, because allergies and addictions are very similar in the way they read. They often used to read them as travel lines. Now travel lines are usually read as the ones coming up vertically on the mount of the moon. This would be your can you see where my cursor is going on there? That would be the psychic curve. Now, if you have a companion line, a line that travels along with your lifeline, that's probably your spouse. So that is another thing, that the lines that you are using the, trying to get everything in. It's getting really close. It's past 9. I'm going to keep going for a little while. If I lose you, if you have to go away because it's 9, thank you for coming. But I'm just going to keep going till at least I've covered almost everything I wanted to talk about. These are the things that I did promise you 60 minutes would do it. And so I think you do have enough to start, and I hope enough to keep going on the, I hope I've gotten you interested enough that you were probably going to want to keep trying. This is my list of my favorite books, and it is in the handouts, which you can find on my website. So I'm going to put that up in the chat in case anybody is, let's see, that's fine. It's on Facebook. I thought I did. Yes, there it is. So that you can find my favorite palmistry books. One of the things that I would like to mention is another kind of way of doing what is another aspect of palm reading is oh heavens to Betsy, I've gotten confused again.
Tchipakkan, I'll post the link.
Oh,
in the
thank
chat.
you, thank you. I will. That's it. Yeah, because it would be. This is the first time I've ever tried to give this class without any handouts or without any without any other things. I did want to include, at least because I think it's fascinating, dermagraphics. 100 years ago, they discovered fingerprints. It's not like fingerprints haven't been there the whole time. But they have discovered that, but the fingerprints don't change. Fingerprints come in when you're still in utero, and they are there. But usually we mostly see them on the fingers, but they occur in a couple places on the hands as well. For instance, if you have a loop here, and you know what your fingerprints look like. The fingerprints are concentric circles or a spiral, which they call a whorl, a loop, or an arch. And if you have 3 arches coming together, they call that a triradius, and because you get 3 angles together. And if you get one of those on a mount, it gives it more energy, more power. The average number of whorls on people's fingers is 2.5 of the 10 fingers. If you have any finger that has a whorl on it, has more, it's a energy point, and it means that you got more energy in that particular aspect of your personality. I know one man who has whorls on 10 fingers. He's an artist who has also gotten nursing degree, and has, it's something like if you know the movie The Librarian, he's got so many things he's done. It's very hard to have that many spots of focus. But if you have a loop going down onto your Mercury, that is a sign of humor. If you have a loop on the other side going off toward Saturn, that's a seriousness. If you have a loop going up onto your Apollo, probably onto the first phalange, it's a style. If you have a loop going down between your Saturn and your Jupiter, that's the Raja mark. That is from the Indian variety of palmistry. presence would be a loop on Jupiter, which would be charisma. If you have one down on the base of your thumb, that's for rhythm, whereas music is even further down. If you have the courage is, there's just so many, but the most interesting one I think is if you have an essay mark on the edge of your luna, that is the sign for someone who has been born into the wrong gender body. And I have checked with several of my trans friends, and they seem to have it, which is kind of cool, especially since it was born. It's built into you, and the ridges don't change. So there you go. But one of the things that is kind of cool is in the Western type of palmistry, they usually divide the hand into, this is the mental part, and this is the practical part, and this is the physical part. In Indian palmistry, this is the spiritual part, mental part, and physical part. And you can also do the same thing with the phalanges. This one is the spiritual, the middle one is the mental, and the bottom one is the physical. One of the things, if any time a section of your hand is bigger than the others, if for instance your if you could see my phalanges, the base ones tend to be a little fatter than the other two, that indicates a great love of food. So and it's not that my fingers are that I'm fat. It's that because I've eaten too much. It's that I just love food, and I'm one of those people that seem to be able to taste better, that taste things more intensely than the others. So that is a thing that you need, but it still seems to work. And the Chinese palmistry, there's a lot they have in common, and the terminology changes, but we're in the Western, the dominated ancient Rome, and then England, and it just went through. We use the Roman terms, and that's where Western magic does but the terms are about the same for okay, I'm going to ask, because I really did push through very quickly. Any questions? I'm assuming that you were following along on your hands as I was talking, because that's the only hand you had with you. So yeah, Jane?
Differences between right hand or dominant hand and left hand or the lesser used hand.
Yeah, the one that you are born with, the hand you don't use much doesn't change much. The hand you use all the time is constantly changing. And that, I think, is one of the most important things. It's the thing that I really love about palmistry, because it is right in your face, or at least on your hands, written that you can change the future. It shows this is your past, and you can look at it, and this is what you had been planning on doing with your life, and this is what you are now planning on doing, your future as it's seen from here. There's a wonderful analogy Serge King had, which is, if you see what's going ahead of you, if you're going in the direction you're going now, and if you're in a car and you're driving, you say the road's going at there, and then there's a tree there, I'm going to hit the tree. No, you're going to turn the wheel and you're going to continue going on the road, not drive into the thing that's right in front of you. We do this all the time, and we have to be aware of this. We have to understand that we are constantly changing the vector of our path. And to me, that is one of the most useful things about palmistry. That, and also it shows your basic personality. If you have a spatulate hand, you had better be working outside. If you have the detail oriented, if you've got a square palm, you should be doing something practical. You should not be doing something that is going to, if you've got an earth hand, you should not be stuck somewhere in an office. You will go crazy. I think HR should be having the people who hire people surreptitiously learn palmistry and use that to match people with jobs, because you'd be a lot more successful that way, because this is what you can use it for yourself, is to do the things that you know are going to work with the way your personality goes. If you are doing something that is going to make you unhappy, you can say, I would like to be like that, but you're not. Then just look at your hand and say, no, that's the way I am. I'm going to have to deal with it. Oh God, there's so many cool things about the hand that you can well, I teach this a lot. I'm probably going, I taught a series, money in your hand, love in your hand. There's different things you can get into. That's why a palm reading usually takes a lot longer than a card reading or even a rune reading, and they take longer than the palm readings. I mean, the card readings. So, but when you're looking at a palm, you're looking at who you are and what you're going to do with your life. So that's you can be doing it like a parlor trick, but that's not what soothsaying is all about. Soothsaying is helping people, empowering people, and giving them tools to work with. Are there any other questions? Hi, Steve. Yeah. So, well, if there aren't questions, then I should let it go, because otherwise Lois is going to have to put too long a show up. But anyway, so I'm going to encourage everybody to go and reserve your place at Changing Times, Changing Worlds, because we have a lot of interesting classes coming, and I'm so excited. And I do take requests. If you know somebody you'd like to see on Otherworldly, just message me and I will try and chase them down and badger them into coming. So if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to end the meeting. Well, bless you all and have a good night then. I hope you have fun, and you feel free to get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook as Tchipakkan, and if I just went too fast, that's because I was trying to cram a lot in. But it is do you feel that I did manage to give you some basics?
Yeah.
Somebody give me some feedback. Yeah. Okay. Yay. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm going to say goodnight then, and we will see you next week at 8. Bye-bye.